everybody, what's up? And welcome to another episode of American Jew. I'm super excited to have as my guest today in studio Michael Schirtzer, a comedian, American Jew, host of the Palestinian Pod. Great to have you, Michael. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Co-host of the Palestinian
Co-host of the Palestinian Pod. No disrespect.
Can you imagine if I was like, I'm taking the Palestine Pod by myself?
Let's get rid of my
It's not a great look. You know what I mean? So the optics of that are bad. She is on the pod and an essential part of it.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I guess you can't really squeeze her out. You gotta
That'd
make sure you guys get along.
See, that'd be a Zionist thing to do. We're anti-Zionist here at the Palestine Pod, and hopefully at the American Jew Pod as well. Yeah,
I'm more of like a post-Zionist, but definitely have a lot of anti-Zionist sentiment. And I'm so excited to have another American Jew who's also against the occupation and speaks out against, the Zionist regime. I feel like we're starting to get together like a little Jewish Justice League take down the Zionist Legion of Doom.
Everyone assemble.
Right?
Yeah.
I feel we need to get more. I feel like actually that's a really great way to describe them.
Yeah.
I think Zionism has just gone totally off the rails, and perhaps it could have been something good, but the way it went down, it's been horrible. I think it's destroying Judaism, actually, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's talk about Zionism, right? Because there was Christian Zionism for the longest time before any Jews subscribed to Zionism, right? Christians were proselytizing Zionism all throughout Europe, trying to get Jews to go to Jerusalem to get raptured, right?
To get raptured and to get rid of the Jews, too, to solve the Jewish problem in Europe that they had.
And so for the longest time, Jews were not a fan of that idea, right? Because we were like, I think we'll stay where we are, not get raptured. Seems like a bad deal, right?
It seems kind of crazy, right? That Jews now, we totally ignore the fact that they want us there so we'll all die.
Right.
And we're just like, oh, no. But they support Israel. So we'll die.
Yeah. Jews, understandably, knew a good deal when we saw one. That wasn't it, right?
It definitely wasn't a good deal, but many Jews still believe that it is a good deal.
Yeah, and so then you get into the 1890s, and the time frame I'm talking about for Christian Zionism is 1400 to 1900, basically. That's when predominantly Christians were understood to be the most Zionist people. And even today in the United States, there's 50 million Christian Zionists who support the occupation of Palestine. Joe Biden, Genocide Joe, being one of them, right? And then in the 1890s, you have the Zionist Congress, where Herzl, who himself was not religious, he was secular, and other folks started to put into motion the plan to colonize Palestine using Jewish bodies.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because it seems like they wanted to escape the anti-Semitism that they were experiencing in Europe, and in doing so, they kind of created a new style of anti-Semitism that's not based on these old anti-Semitic stereotypes or tropes that people had in Europe, but based on what happened in 1948, the Nakba, the Jewish people coming to Palestine and basically murdering and kicking, over 750,000 people.
But first, let's talk about how Palestinians opened their doors to Jewish refugees coming from the Holocaust, right? Palestinians gave Jewish refugees food, water, clothing, shelter, and then the military gangs, the Zionist terrorist gangs.
I think it's important to make sure that they're called terrorist gangs. I know people just want to be the Zionist militias.
No.
But they weren't. They were freaking terrorists. The Irgun, the Stern gang.
Yes.
Even Einstein was writing letters being this is not going to end well.
The Haganah, the Lehi, all of those folks were engaged in a genocidal act of murdering Palestinians, stealing their homes, stealing their land. And then the families who came as refugees and were allowed to stay in Palestinians' houses stole those houses.
It's crazy. It's very sad and very upsetting, and I don't understand how anyone could think that a beautiful country that's going to be the Jewish homeland is going to start that way, with such bloodshed. Especially because it's like, I'd say maybe like part of the foundation of the Jewish religion is almost like the Ten Commandments. And it's like, it's almost like Zionism like went through the Ten Commandments, like, all right, we got to get rid of that one.
Yeah.
We got to get rid of this one.
Yes.
We're not going to do this one. It's almost, I think that like Zionism is the death of Judaism. And I think like Christian Zionists and other anti-Semites like Balfour and Peel, when they were making, their declarations or their commissions to kind of give Israel to the Jews, they wanted to do that because they wanted to empower Zionism because they knew that that is going to be the death of Judaism, and they hated Judaism because they hated Jews because they're fucking anti-Semites.
Yeah. Herzl said anti-Semites will be our best friends and anti-Semitic countries our best allies, right? And it's because they themselves hated Judaism.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, and it's crazy just because I know people want to be like, oh well, the Jews needed Israel after the Holocaust, but actually like the Zionist organizations, they were keeping Jews from escaping the horrors of the Holocaust because they wanted to put pressure to get Israel. They didn't care about Jewish life. They didn't care about Jewish well-being. I read The Escape Artist about the guy who escaped Auschwitz, and he hated Zionists.
Yes.
He hated them because he's like, we got to tell the world what's happening. And they were like, oh no, we got to wait to get Israel. That was what their priority was.
Timeline-wise, the colonization of Palestine starts long before the Holocaust, right?
Absolutely.
Even the Balfour Declaration is like 1917 or something like that. So yeah, the idea, and Holocaust survivors today live in poverty. There's a third of the population who survived the Holocaust who live in poverty. They rely on volunteer mutual aid to provide them groceries. How is it easier to buy missiles than apples?
You're absolutely right, and it's so crazy that that's the reality that they're living in, and people, they always want to kind of like invoke the Holocaust as either, justification or just kind of to like perpetuate Jewish victimization, to use it as, an excuse. And also because I think that, Jewish people are more manipulated when they're living in fear. I come across, I'm sure you do too, people on social media, they're like, oh, well, you're going to wish there was Israel when they come to get you. And it's like, the only reason they're coming to get me would be because of what people are doing in Israel.
100%. The occupation of Palestine is the source of the majority of anti-Semitism and bad feelings towards Judaism in the world. If you go on record and then you say, I am the representative of all Jews, and then you commit genocide, what message are you sending? Here's a really good way to determine the difference between Judaism and Zionism, right? Judaism says, do not kill and do not steal. Zionism says, kill everyone and steal anything.
Right? I mean, Judaism's like, don't make any other God above me. And Zionism is, Israel is above everything else. It's like, it's so crazy. I was like so against the tenets of the Ten Commandments.
That's actually a great point. The state is the most important thing for them. And that is what? Fascism. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's like they care more about nationality, unfortunately, than religion. So I'm a little curious. I know we started talking about Zionism, but I'd like to go back a little bit in your history, and I'm curious about like your upbringing with Judaism.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Jewish family. Both my parents are Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed.
So what kind of Jew, like Orthodox, Reform, Conservative? What did you
more of a
yourself?
Reform Judaism, yeah.
Okay.
And I did not go on the free trip to Palestine because when they offered it to me, they framed it as a birthright trip, and I was like, I was born in New York. Thank you so much.
Okay, so was that already after like kind of like your unlearning experience?
Not even. It was just kind of weird to me because they were offering me something for free and I didn't know them. And so I didn't like that vibe. And, I went to Hebrew school briefly. My teacher was really rude to me, which I think is like pretty common among Hebrew school teachers, but I just didn't like her either. And then, I was in a Jewish fraternity. So I was in AE Pi, and this is when my awakening came. We had our hands tied behind our backs. They had us blindfolded. They were sensory deprivation torturing us. And we had two guys from the IOF who were also in our pledge class. So it was like 8 American guys and then 2 guys from the occupation. And we were all tied up together. You know what I mean? Like it was so strange because when you are being tied up and tortured, your other senses kind of take over. So like your hearing, your smell. And I could hear these two guys who had served in the IOF cackling, laughing. And the American guys were like, what's going on with you? You're giving off psycho vibes. And the guys said to us, they said, we used to do this to Palestinians all the time. And it was in that moment that like everything changed for me. I realized that, I'd been lied to by all of my social institutions, friends, family, and I sort of needed to investigate what was going on. And I met with Palestinians. I started reading, hearing their stories, and it totally changed the course of my life.
Did you stay in the fraternity?
I was kicked out, actually.
Did it have anything to do with your pro-Palestinian beliefs, or?
I mean, you'd have to ask them.
Okay, I could deal with a little vagueness. So it sounds like, although you weren't particularly religious, Judaism was still a part of your identity, at least to the extent that when you went to university, you wanted to join a Jewish fraternity.
Yeah. Yes. I would say Judaism has been a large part of my life, and, it's something that I am glad to be a part of. I am proud to be Jewish, and I am proud to be anti-Zionist.
I love that. And I want to, if we could just talk about that for a minute, because I feel like often because of our views being pro-Palestinian human rights, caring about the dispossession and occupation of the Palestinian people immediately want to call us self-hating Jews, even anti-Semitic sometimes, which is crazy. So I love that, before you said that you were a proud anti-Zionist, you said you were a proud Jew. And I would just love it if maybe you could talk about some of the reasons why you are a proud Jew and some of the reasons why you love being Jewish. I know one of the reasons why I hate, and I think you hate being Jewish too, is because of all the crimes done in its name in Israel. But I think it's important also to talk about, why we like being Jewish.
Yeah, well, really quickly, I don't subscribe to the idea that Zionists are Jews, right?
Okay.
Like, I don't think that their actions reflect Judaism, right?
That's definitely true.
Because Jews are based on justice. Like the idea of Judaism is like tikkun olam, right? To heal the world, right? And that is not murder, steal, take up arms against the people of Palestine, set up an apartheid state, right? And in the way that like ISIS doesn't represent Islam, right? We would not accept that their actions are a representation of us. Certainly they are using our religion and our trauma in order to perpetuate their crimes against humanity, their genocide, but they are not upholding the standard of Judaism.
I totally hear what you're saying, but I do think there are people around the world, Jews around the world, that would identify as being a Zionist, who maybe don't really understand the horrors that the Israeli Zionists have committed, who would feel that they have somewhat of like a connection to Judaism, and they've been so indoctrinated that they think that their connection to Judaism is based on, their love and unconditional support for Israel.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Like Zionism has replaced Judaism for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
And
100%.
So why would I be like, oh, you're Jewish? It's like, no, you're a Zionist, right? There's a huge difference.
So where do you think that line is between being Jewish and being a Zionist?
I mean, I think it's the apartheid wall that separates them.
It's the apartheid wall that separates them.
It's a big gap.
No, for sure. But I mean, like you meet somebody.
That was just a little joke.
Well, obviously it's very unfortunate that, they have this huge wall separating that they want to be like, everything's cool over there and it's so not cool over there. And they don't want you to know what's happening on the other side. But I think that, what Zionism is, and it has many interpretations that are kind of
I understand
happening.
what you're talking about, but Zionism, as we understand it, must be defined by its material conditions, right? Which is over 75 years of murder, genocide, forced displacement, starvation, rape, right? These are the things that Zionism
Those are the actions. So you
must
say
be
the
defined
actions
by.
define
Yes.
Zionism, and
So
that's what it should be defined on,
in the
not by
like,
the principles that it was originally maybe thought of.
I mean, if you speak to listen to read the documentation of the original Zionists, they are explicit. They are like, we are going to colonize Palestine. We are going to forcibly displace the native population, right? He even said, Herzl said, surreptitiously move the population, right?
What they're still trying to do right now.
And so from the jump, Zionism has been about murder, displacement, and stealing.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I mean, with how Theodor Herzl, I guess, with some of his literature and the way it came to fruition, that's absolutely true. I mean, that's what happened.
And those same Zionists actually turned away Holocaust survivors because they weren't fit to serve in the war crimes army.
It's absolutely crazy what happened in 1948. Someone said something to me recently where they said what the Zionists did is the problem. It's not so much even the state of Israel is the problem. It's how Israel was created.
It's what the Zionists do every day. Every day there's house demolitions. Every day they're starving people. Every day they are collectively punishing an entire population. And for what?
They are doing that. For sure, but I guess I have a problem with just lumping all the Zionists in together in that category, because I have encountered people that will identify as a Zionist who do believe that there should be a Palestinian state, who are against the government or against the oppression of the Palestinian people, who are against the occupation, who are against the genocide that's happening, who could understand that it's an apartheid, but still feel partial to this dream or this belief that, Jews can't exist in their ancestral homeland.
I mean, look, Jews can exist, Zionists can't, right?
Well, I think that's where the problem became when we said it's not that if Zionists being exclusive is kind of the problem.
What you're talking about is a liberal Zionist, right? Where it's biodegradable bullets. I don't give a fuck about that, dude. I swear to God, I'm so unmoved by those people. There's 6 people who are inside the occupation, literally throwing their bodies up against it. And that's cool. But other than that, I'm totally unmoved.
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, it's okay to be unmoved, but I just think that there's a danger to lump all Zionists together. It would be like lumping all Palestinians together.
It wouldn't be though, because Palestinians are not engaged
but
in
Israel
a genocide.
tries to say that all Palestinians are Hamas and they're all terrorists. That's what's happening right now.
Right.
That's why we see people that are blocking aid from getting into Gaza. That's why we see people that are calling for the continue of a genocide.
And that is Zionism.
And that is a problem.
100%.
When you want to view all people the same way, I think no matter what side of the wall you are on.
So you've just described how from the lowest levels of society, right, there are children out there who are blocking aid trucks, all the way up to the very top of the government who has explicitly called for the genocide by saying things like Amalek. So what exactly are you leaving room for if we've just covered?
Because I don't think that's everybody. There are also tens of thousands of people Israelis that have taken to the street that are against the government.
Okay.
There are plenty of people that are
true
Israelis
solidarity
that are refusing to serve in the IOF
that's
because
good.
they don't want to do that. And there are plenty of other breaking the silence, former Israeli soldiers that are speaking out against the occupation and being honest about the horrible sins and the crimes that they were forced to commit. There's rabbis for human rights. There's B'Tselem.
Yeah.
So
those people would not identify as Zionists. Those people.
I've met members of Breaking the Silence that do identify as Zionists.
All right, well then they're not. I mean, they're not really in solidarity with Palestinian people then, because true solidarity looks like leaving.
Looks like leaving.
If you have another passport, go back to the country that you immigrated
from. There
from.
are plenty of people in Israel that don't have other
100%.
passports.
And if you were there before the establishment of the state, then your family should absolutely be allowed to stay. But if you immigrated after the genocide of the Palestinian people and then took up a stolen home, and there are people who literally have the keys to those stolen homes and the deeds to those stolen homes, who are exiled, who are in diaspora right now, you should probably give up that home and let that person go back to their home, no?
I mean,
Wouldn't that be the Jewish thing to do?
that does seem
not-
like that would
to
be like
not make somebody
the
else-
ZAKA thing and the charity thing to do.
To
But
not make somebody else a refugee? Wouldn't that be the Jewish thing to do?
I definitely think that is the righteous thing to do, not to make people refugees, not to kick people out of their homes.
Yeah.
But I also do think that there are people who didn't come in 1948, weren't part of that were born in the last 75 years, that life in Israel, they didn't come from someplace else. That's the only life, that's the only home that they know.
Yeah.
In addition to the people that were kicked out of other Middle Eastern countries that have no other place to go. The same Middle Eastern countries that aren't really doing jack shit for the Palestinians right now.
So what do you mean by that? Speak specifically.
Well, I mean, in 1948, when that happened, there were Jews that were kicked out of places all over the Middle East.
Yeah, so there's a great professor who is an Iraqi Jew himself who has done extensive work about how the Zionists were behind the campaign to create terror attacks in various places like Iraq, like Tunisia, like Morocco, etc., and Yemen, And what they did is they created terror attacks in order to galvanize those populations and those governments against the Jewish people in order to incentivize Jewish people to then emigrate to the occupation of Palestine. And during that emigration, the occupation stole Yemeni children. It's called the Yemenite Affair.
Oh, I mean, I
They
was
then
not
stole.
familiar with
They stole
that.
those children, and then they distributed them to Eastern European Ashkenazi families.
To raise as their own.
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
Who knows why a kidnapper kidnaps?
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I haven't heard about this. I wouldn't put that past the Zionists from everything that I know and everything that I've read.
And they're
everything.
stealing children today in Gaza. They have stolen children from Gaza and brought them back to the occupation of Palestine under the guise of we're protecting them. We're going to give them a better life.
And what does it do with them? It keeps them in administrative detention, or it sends them to
Who
people's
knows?
homes
Honestly,
to
probably sells them into
adopt?
fucking sex slavery because it's a safe haven for pedophiles.
There definitely is a lot wrong with it. Unfortunately, it is a safe haven for people that are sexual deviants.
Yeah.
I was hearing even now how the settlers that are in hotels, there is, I think I might have read that on one
From
of your
me.
stories.
Yeah.
Michael has such amazing stories. If you're not following him on social media, I recommend everybody do so. His stories are so informative about what is happening in Gaza and in Palestine. So I definitely encourage everybody to follow him. And even just the group that it's escaping my name right now, that they come in when the people die, ZAKA or something like that.
ZAKA.
ZAKA.
They have their own white helmet, yeah.
The guy the founder of ZAKA was known as the Harade Jeffrey Epstein, because that's the founder.
What a business card.
Right? And it's so crazy because these are the guys that are spreading a lot of the lies and a lot of the propaganda that we've heard coming out of the attack on October 7th.
Right.
And
remember when they said that Hamas committed rape and then everybody who reported that apologized for lying? Do you remember that? Do you remember when Joe Biden himself walked back that statement, and that's difficult because he can't walk forward?
Well, he walked back the statement about the beheaded babies, right?
Oh, that's right, about the baby.
And so Biden now, what do you think's going on with him? Because now he just came out, Israel's over the top. You think he's had enough with Netanyahu, or you think he's just worried about re-election?
I think he's feeling the pressure of all of the protests all over the fucking country, and I think he recognizes that he has an optics problem. But nobody's going to fuck with Joe Biden. Genocide Joe has already built his own coffin.
He definitely has built his own coffin, and it is waiting for him.
He's kind of already in there. You know what I mean?
warm.
Just kind of talking.
He's halfway in there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Michael, when you were growing up, what were you told about Palestinians in Palestine?
So I actually wasn't told anything about Palestine when I was growing up, but I was told to support the occupation of Palestine.
Just give your blind support of the occupation?
Yep.
Just hey, support. I feel like at least they try to hide it a little bit from me.
Yeah. No, I mean, they called it Israel, and
Okay.
they were like, you need to support Israel. That's what they told me growing up. And now I recognize that as the occupation of Palestine.
What do you think of this idea that too many Jews have, that the Jews need Israel for Jewish safety? It's
so funny how they vacillate in between Jews need this place for safety. Also, this is the most dangerous place to be a Jew. Right?
Do they say that? I feel
Yeah,
like
because
not
they're
enough
like
people say that. They're always like, "This is a safe haven for Jews." I'm like, "That's the most."
They're
dangerous
like, you're
place.
so privileged in America with all of your safety. You have no idea how dangerous it is for us in our bomb shelters here. And it's like, well, okay, is it the safest place for Jews, or do everybody need bomb shelters? Like, what? It can't be both, right?
Absolutely.
They live in a constant state of cognitive dissonance.
No, that's so true that they do say that. They're like, they're tweeting, it's the safest place for Jews
From their bomb shelter. Right.
It makes no
And
sense.
it's like, you didn't even need the bomb shelter. You'd have been fine. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they got the Iron Dome.
the Iron Dome takes care of the way that I've been getting censored a lot on social media. And so the way that I post on social media is sort of the way that like rockets come out of Gaza right now, right? Where it's like, some of these are going to get shot down, but the ones that hit, baby boy.
I mean, the rockets that come out of Gaza, the ones that they barely do any damage.
Right.
The amount of people that have been killed from those rockets is so low. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And on the other side, it's just like thousands and it's just like, I know now people are awake a little bit more to what's been going on there because, you know, instead of this slow drip genocide that we've been seeing over the last 75 years, it's like, bam, right in your face, like 28,000, 30,000, who even knows because, you know, trapped under the rubble.
People are still under the rubble.
So it's absolutely crazy. But meanwhile, it's like, you know, 12,000 just on October 7th.
Well,
and
actually,
that wasn't even 1,200, excuse me.
Yeah,
that wasn't
yeah.
even...
They started with 1,400,
right.
Then they reduced it to 1,200, and then we found that there were duplicates on that list, and half of those people were actually a part of the occupation's army.
And there were also many people that were killed by Israel when they came to try to stop Hamas. I mean,
check out the Apache helicopter video.
Right? It's like they sent in this girl tank squad that I saw a video where these girls are talking how they didn't even know how to use the equipment. Hey. And they're like, oh, we're just figuring it out on the fly. Yeah, when you're bombing the homes that Israelis were living in the kibbutzes, is you figuring it on the fly. It's like, you know, I know everyone talks about Israel as one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world, and they do, but they don't have the sophisticated soldiers because they're a bunch of 18-year-old kids who were terrified for their fucking lives and don't know what they're doing and have been raised to hate Palestinians.
Yeah. That's the type of girl boss shit I can get behind, actually.
That's what you like, because they make a lot of these thirst trap videos.
Because they killed. And also, how can they have a good military but not good soldiers? That's so funny. You just said that. You're like, they have a good military, but the soldiers are trash. You know
well,
what I mean?
They have like sophisticated weapons.
They have all.
They, like the higher ups may be okay, but like the young army that they have of 18-year-old kids sucks.
Surprisingly, making TikToks every day does not prepare you for ground combat.
Yeah, what do you think is going on with, you know, people that they are like watching these Israeli soldiers making TikTok videos while they're murdering?
Well, they're uploading their own war crimes, and so it's really helpful, actually. We've been cataloging them and then sending it over to the ICJ. So we actually genuinely thank the Israeli occupation soldiers for uploading your own evidence. You idiots.
It's so crazy to me to like get in arguments and people be like, it's not a genocide, it's not an apartheid. It's like, you could just go watch Israel TikTok and you could see how it's all those, like they're telling you, and especially the government that's currently in Israel, and they're just like, they're not hiding it at all. Yeah. And it's just, you know, in American Jews, or so many Jews in the diaspora, I feel like this is what happens when they just like have their blind support to Israel. It's become this, you know, genocidal machine that is supplying weapons to the world. Again, not a Jewish thing. No. So like, hey, we're gonna give you spy equipment so you can listen to everybody's phones. We're gonna give you drones so you could bomb people. Like, it's absolutely insane. Jewish people, why do you think they're so oblivious? Do you think is it ignorance, or is it just like they have such like their identity of Judaism is so tied to Israel that they can't not stand behind everything it does?
I think we are experiencing perhaps the most sophisticated brainwashing propaganda campaign that mankind has ever known. right?
It sounds like you might be right?
Because they have infiltrated almost every level of society, and that includes school textbooks, that includes universities, that includes movies, media, music, technology, right? They are everywhere. The Zionists are. Right?
No, absolutely. I don't remember when I went to Hebrew school, maybe I took it out, like they had me in one of those like chairs with my eyes wide open from Clockwork Orange, just watching like love Israel, hate Arabs and Muslims.
Do you know Daniela Weiss? She's one of like the head settlers, and she's been giving a lot of interviews recently, and they asked her, they're like, can you explain your thinking to American Jews? And she was like, so the thing is, you actually have to brainwash people. She said this.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've seen her. That woman is so ridiculous.
She was like, she said, you have to brainwash people because that's the only way to make Zionism continue. And so Zionism is the large part of a propaganda brainwashing campaign. It is, and I mean this with all seriousness, a death cult.
It kind of is. What do you like to say to other Jews or, you know, even Zionists that you come across to try to open their minds and, you know, bring them back to the reality of life in the situation? I mean, is there anything, do you even try anymore? Do you even care to?
I try not to engage with Zionists. It's like a bidet. It's much cleaner that way. I have resources available for people who want to learn, and they have learned. I've received messages from people who are like, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. You've really opened my eyes and shown me that Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism, and that like they even were distancing themselves from Judaism because the Zionists had sullied Judaism to them. Right. And so somebody, and this means a lot to me, they told me that like my work made them proud to be Jewish again. Right?
That's amazing.
And so I don't have anything to say to Zionists, right? Nobody should be speaking to Zionists, platforming them, normalizing with them. Literally, Zionists should be scared to admit that they once supported Zionism. It should be like Rhodesia. It should be a blip in the map of history, right? Do you understand what I mean?
I understand what you're saying. I don't 100% agree with you, but I hear what you're saying.
Maybe you will one day. Yeah.
Maybe I will one day. Sitting between Michael and the producer of this episode, Alex, that day probably going to come really soon between the two of you. So what about the people that aren't Zionists, that are just people that are just other Jewish people that haven't really been educated, that don't really know, are seeing this right now? Like, is there something that you like to tell them?
Yes. If they're coming with a good and open heart, with pure and happy intentions, then I'm happy to engage with those people. And I would say you don't really want to argue with Nelson Mandela about apartheid, right?
Absolutely.
I would say that these are like, you don't really want to like discuss and be on the opposite side of civil rights when Dr. Angela Davis has weighed in on it, right?
That's why I love what you're saying right now, because it's true. It's like all these experts, all these brilliant minds have spoken about it.
You don't want to say,
nope.
You don't want to say it's not a genocide when over 800 genocide scholars have said it is absolutely a genocide that is happening right now, right? You don't want to be like, yeah, but it doesn't like feel like a genocide to me because it's like not Jews. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from a lot of Zionist Jews right now.
It's absolutely so crazy, the amount of people that just want to like so deny the genocide. It's like, hey, newsflash, how many other countries right now are being accused of genocide? Like, it's not like this is something that happens every day. Like, they're making false accusations of genocide again. Like, it's like, if you're being accused of a genocide, here's an idea: stop fucking murdering people. Like, don't be like, oh no, it's not a genocide, and then go kill another like 20,000 people. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Allow the aid trucks in. Don't have people from all levels of society blocking the aid trucks from entering.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane that they have. Well, you know, Israel does cower to the settlers because it uses them to do what it wants to do, but it can't do it.
Well, it doesn't. It does it by itself, and it does it by the extension of the settlers.
Right.
There is absolutely no differentiation between the settlers and the so-called like army, right? They are working in concert, and often they are being told what to do by the settlers.
Yeah, like it's so crazy how like the settlers will go somewhere, they'll start like destroying Palestinian property, they'll kill Palestinian people, and then when the Palestinians try to protect themselves, self-defense, which is so important, the military will attack the Palestinians.
Yes.
It makes no sense. And then often also a lot of these settlers, they were in the military, they'll go and commit their horrible violence and their disgusting acts wearing the outfits of the Israeli, the IOF, whatever you want to call them, the Israeli
Or
military
sometimes
outfits.
they will take up outfits trying to look Palestinian and then just start shooting from amongst Palestinians, right? We saw they infiltrated a hospital recently and assassinated people who were in their hospital bed. 3 teenagers were assassinated by the Israeli occupation in a hospital, and they were dressed up as Palestinians, doctors, paramedics, right? And then they ran out.
This happened in the West Bank,
This
right?
happened recently in the West
And it said
Bank.
this is kind of like a war crime to go in and
It's
to do something like
absolutely
that.
a war crime.
And it's absolutely crazy. And of course, Israel just says, "Oh, well, they were terrorists."
Okay,
oh,
but
can we
also
see some proof
the
that
West
they were
Bank-
terrorists? No, you don't need proof. Oh, you want proof? You're an anti-Semite. Why is that? I like it really pisses me off.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm sure you've heard this. Me too, unless you're a Jew. Fuck anybody who says that shit. Evidence to, even if you're a Jew. It's absolutely crazy. Why is it that, for some reason, Israel is like, we don't have to. It's really pissing me off, especially now with the UNRWA thing, where they made these accusations over a week ago. There has been the evidence has not been corroborated. It has not been verified. It hasn't been anything. But UNRWA is at risk of collapsing, this humanitarian catastrophe that is desperate for aid. And meanwhile, people are like, oh no, well, Israel said something without any proof, even though not too long ago, Israel made the accusation about 6 or 7 Palestinian human rights organizations. They were terrorist groups. Okay, not according to 9 European states and US intelligence who said, well, we found no proof of that. But it's for some reason, it keeps happening and everyone's like, oh yeah, whatever, they're terrorists, when Israel is committing the terrorist actions. Why is the world is it so blind, or is it ignorance? Is it Islamophobia?
I think Islamophobia plays a big part in it as well. There's been a huge dehumanization of Arabs at large in America, especially post 9/11, right? In media, they've been dehumanized and they've not been allowed to share their stories, control their own stories, speak for themselves in any real capacity. And I think in 2021, it was the first time that we really heard from Palestinians themselves, right? People like Mohammed El-Kurd, who captured the world's attention and sort of got people to start understanding what it's like to be living life under occupation, and then have this huge media campaign constantly pressured against you, constantly trying to submerge you in a storm of lies, right? A storm of false accusations, a storm of libel and slander. And then the people who are behind those lies and slander will go and sue you for defamation. They'll sue you for things, right? Because they have a huge legal budget. It's called Lawfare, and they have a podcast about it called the Lawfare Podcast.
It's absolutely crazy. Yeah, you're talking, of course, what happened in Sheikh Jarrah when they were kicking Palestinians out of their homes, which they constantly do, and they're constantly doing it. And it's crazy how someone will be getting kicked out of their home, and for some reason, they're the ones that are being vilified.
Yes.
And it's like they're just trying to live their lives. And I think this, it helps bring attention to not only the brainwashing that, Jews in the diaspora face, but I feel like people in the West, all kind of have, which is also has to do, I think, with a little bit of entitlement, which I think definitely is happening in Israel. I personally think Israelis are the most entitled people I ever met. I think they have this entitled aggression, which is really just disgusting and horrible. And, obviously, that comes from being told that you are God's chosen person. You deserve something more than the people that actually
So let's talk
live
about
there.
that. I spoke to Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. He is the head of a congregation here in New York City. And what he said, when in reference to God's chosen people, that doesn't mean that you get to do whatever the fuck you want, no consequences. You can just steal land and kill people. It's all good. God's chosen people, what he means is we are chosen to uphold certain commandments, right? certain
Absolutely.
responsibilities of Judaism, and that includes healing the world.
Absolutely. Anybody that thinks that, God's chosen people means that you could do whatever you want is so far removed from Judaism, and I'd say from, reality, where they won't think that like, oh yeah, well, I'm God's, like, that's just like such a crazy fallacy. I mean, even if you want to go to the Bible and, deal with God, Abraham's covenant with God, and that's when they gave him Israel. It's like, it's just like, it's a ridiculous thing. It's fairy tales. Is that what you got? You got fairy tales and a bunch of misinformation.
Yeah. They'll be like, God gave us the land. Also, I don't believe in God.
Yeah, right? I was like, listen, I cut off a piece of my dick for that land, and no one's getting it back.
They'd be like, God gave us the land. That's why I dropped 2-ton metric bombs on it. Because God gave it to me.
Right? That's how much I love God's land. I'm just going to blow the hell out of it. I'm going to burn the olive groves that have been there for years, generations. I'm just going to destroy the land because God gave it to me. Now I can do whatever I want with it. And that's kind of been what Netanyahu's MO has been, where he said, we want to use the land. We want to take everything from the land that we could get, which, definitely is not in the spirit of humanity. Forget even Judaism.
Yeah, sorry, really quickly. New York City is so wild. I literally just watched a dog take a shit right outside. And then they left some, and that's actually one of the Zionist arguments. They still left. So.
Oh, they still left it right there? Okay, yeah. No wonder. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, they tried to pick it up with a napkin from Chipotle. I love this city, dude.
New York is a great town.
Yeah.
You're from LA.
I'm from LA, yeah.
Your family all still lives there?
Well, actually, so I was born here in New York, but like I was raised in Los Angeles. And my family lives in LA, yeah.
What does your family feel about your perspective when it comes to all this?
So, I would say that my parents don't always agree with me, but they recognize that what I'm doing is important and they support me, and I appreciate them for that.
That is incredible. That's amazing. That's the way parents should be, I think.
I've had other family disown me. I've had other family send me like the nastiest messages that I've ever received, and I received death threats. And so, and so I was like, okay, cousin, you know what I mean? Like, good to hear from you. Literally haven't spoken to you in years. You don't follow me. You had to find me. Like, you went out of your way to send me this message.
Yeah, I thought the Zionists that wanted to murder me was bad, but Aunt Patty, holy shit.
Yeah.
Bring it down a notch, girl.
Yeah, for real. So that family still lives here in New York, and I have not seen them.
Okay, so the LA people, the out west, they're more open. But I think that's what family should be, I think that family should be...
Really? Because you should read the message she sent.
No, not her, but I think your parents...
Oh, yeah,
I feel like that's the way family should be, that even if they don't 100% agree with you, that they should still support you and recognize what you're doing and still, be open to hearing more of what you're saying. Not your aunt or your cousin or whatever, extended family. They sound like a bunch of bitches.
They are.
But, I mean, it's crazy just the judgment people want to have on others for standing up for what is right. And I'm sorry, I don't know how anyone could not be even educated a little bit on what has been happening, what the Palestinian people have gone through, and not be like, holy shit, like these people have gone through like some of the worst things ever over the last 75 years, and they continue to do so. And people just like don't care. It's almost like Palestinians aren't people. I don't feel that way. But
to Zionists,
not only to Zionists, but I feel like to other people in the West, they also feel that way. Certainly to Zionists in Israel and the hardcore Zionists in Israel who want to get rid of all the Palestinian people and have been dehumanizing them for 75 years. But I think because of the way Israel has been presented in the media, because of Western allegiance to Israel, I think it goes beyond just Jewish people feeling that way about Palestinians, about Arab people, about Muslim people.
We've spoken about the Christian Zionists as well. There's 50 million Christian Zionists in the United States who are funding the genocide of the literal descendants of Jesus Christ, right? Jesus Christ is from where?
Bethlehem.
Right. Where is Bethlehem?
It's in Palestine.
It's in Palestine, right? The Church of Nativity. These people are still there. You know what I mean?
No, they're there, and they're like, a genocide is being committed.
They literally asked to cancel Christmas this past year because of the genocide of the Palestinian people. And you have American Christians who were still sipping cocoa and eggnog. right? And it's like, okay, so clearly you actually don't give a fuck about Jesus or his descendants or like what he taught or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Definitely not what he taught.
Yeah.
Because again, like what is happening is not with any religion, really.
Yeah. Almost no religion supports the genocide of people.
No, I don't think so. I don't know what religion. Well, Zionism, I guess, is the only religion.
That's the one.
Zionism
is its own religion, and the people who believe it are kookier than Scientologists.
I think you might be right. I think, I always refer to Zionism as more of a political ideology, but I think it is kind of like a new religion because it has replaced Judaism. So it is like the new religion to people.
And it's a death cult because it recruits Jews from all over the world to come serve in its war crimes army, where it itself admits that it's ill-prepared for combat, sends them into combat, and they are killed because they don't know what they're doing. They're not from there. They shouldn't be there. They were born in Austin, Texas. Why the fuck are you in Gaza?
Right? What do you think is going through these people's heads? Is it that they've been so indoctrinated?
Yeah.
Is it that they're so missing something in their life? They want to be a part of something, because I've seen that video where it's like, I am from Nashville, I'm from Oslo, and we're all coming here to fucking do something stupid and murder Palestinians. Is it just a bunch of cowboys that are like, I want an excuse to kill Arabs, I'll go join the IDF?
I think it's an example of the brainwashing, right? Like, it is a clear indication that the brainwashing is so effective that it's moving people literally to another place to commit war crimes, right?
It's pretty crazy, right?
It's like,
that's how powerful
the U.S. military does a lot of propaganda. They're like, you should come commit war crimes for us. You know what I mean? And these people are like, no, thank you. We're not going to commit war crimes for the country that we actually grew up in or whatever. We're going to go to another country and commit war crimes for them because Judaism, I think. Oh, man. That's tough, huh? That is, rabbis everywhere cringe at that. That is tough.
Yeah, it's so crazy how so many religious Jews and the people that really care the most about the religion of Judaism and follow the laws are against the state of Israel, against kind of Zionism and what's happening. And so many other Jewish people just kind of oh, they're just kooky Jews.
The text says definitely don't pick up arms and colonize Palestine. You know what I mean?
It says that.
It's pretty clear. Hey, don't fucking enter Palestine with guns. It may as well say that explicitly.
It does say, you have to, God is going to bring you back. It's going to be the Messiah.
Messiah.
If anything that you have to break any of, the commandments to get it back, it's not the right time.
And Zionists are like, shut up, you anti-Semite.
Right? Oh, they're like, oh no, the Mashiach already came.
Right.
I'm like,
they've got billboards in Brooklyn of him. Haven't you seen?
That's the
Jew Belong sponsored them.
Oh my God, Jew Belong, right? And
no, but really quickly, they literally collaborate with Nazis. And I'm talking about even back in the day, the Hague Agreement was an economic agreement that allowed for the colonization of Palestine, right? And then even today, they have close ties with the Ukrainian army. The Ukrainian army has been outed as a Nazi army. Legitimately not. And sure, there are Nazis in Russia killing Nazis in Ukraine, and as a Jew, that's delicious, right? But
I'm all about Nazi violence.
We call that a win-win in the business. But the Israeli occupation is collaborating with the Ukrainians and even hosted people from the Azov battalion, specifically their Nazi battalion, right? And they even sent people from the occupation to fight in Ukraine side by side with Nazis. Now, I'm not a Jewish scholar, rabbinical council, anything like that, but that does not sound super Jewish to me.
Definitely not Jewish. For people that don't know about the Hague Agreement, will you tell everybody a little bit about it?
So
because I think I want more people to know about the Hague Agreement. And people are just, it's so crazy how many Jews are just so clueless to so many horrible things.
So the Hague Agreement is an economic agreement that existed during the Second World War, between the Zionists and the Nazis, right? And it allowed for the economic transfer of some wealth from Germany to purchase lands, farm, residential buildings, etc. in Palestine, and then transfer some portions of the Jewish Zionist population to Palestine. It was initially, one of the Nazis' ideas was, instead of killing all of the Jews, why don't we just make sure that they go somewhere else, right? And I don't know, like, if you are familiar with a lot of the Zionist like propaganda now, where it's like, why won't Egypt take Gazans? Why won't they go to Jordan? Why don't they go to Saudi Arabia? This is literally what Goebbels was saying about Jews, right?
Okay. Yeah, because that's not their home.
Yes.
That's why they shouldn't go everywhere. I know. I hate when people say that too. Like,
Yeah.
what? Well, why don't they just accept them in Egypt? It's like, well,
Yeah.
why should they all leave their home? That's what's important to the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
Is their identity, is
Yeah.
their home, is their land.
Isn't it strange that it's like easier for people to conceptualize moving 2.1 million people to an entirely another place, but they're like totally aghast at the idea that people with dual citizenship go back to where they're from?
It is kind of crazy, and a lot of people are, from what I understand, leaving
over
Israel.
30,000 went away from the occupation in one day. And you know why they did that? Because it's not their land. It's not their home. They don't want to live there. They don't want to die there. They recognize that they are tired of being sunburnt.
You know, I think what you just said is really important, because it's true. The Palestinians, they don't want to leave because that is their home. That is their land.
Yeah.
But many people that are Israeli who have come from other places, they are cool with leaving because they have other places to go.
Yeah.
They came from other places.
Yeah. And they're gonna keep leaving, right? Especially as Jewish supremacy subsides. Just like in apartheid South Africa, you have people who left because they were there for the supremacy. They were enjoying supremacy. And then when it ended, they were like, I don't really like this here. And what they did is they converted to Judaism. They threw on a yarmulke and they started colonizing the West Bank. There's an entire Vice documentary about the South Africaners who are over there right now. And so you'll
it's so
see
crazy that people are like that. They
want
to be cowboys.
You'll
That's
see
what they
the
wanna do.
exact same thing happen at the end of the occupation, right? There will be people who are like, I was kind of just here for this whole supremacy thing, and I'm really like allowed out.
Is that it? Peace out? No, it's crazy that so many of these settlers, it's like, it's fucking Westworld to them, you know? They're like, oh, I'll go over there and I could do whatever I want. I could go murder Palestinians. I could go burn shit. I could destroy them.
Yeah.
You know, I could start riots, spread fucking lies.
Pogroms. We call them pogroms, right?
yeah.
Jews remember when we were on the other side of pogroms.
And it's so crazy because, you know, Harara, that happened last year. A lot of people, you know, found out about that. And so many people are like, oh, well, you know, they did that because brothers were killed nearby. So, and that justifies it.
Yeah, probably by the IOF.
To so many, you know,
Just like they shot their own hostage. It's always bring home the hostages and never. What happened to those hostages who were gunned down speaking Hebrew, like having white flags?
Absolutely, I
Right?
know.
It's
Bring
always
down the hostages. Maybe tell Israel to stop bombing where they're actually being kept. I mean,
It's always bring home the hostages and never. Why do they keep turning down all the hostage deals? It's always bring home the hostages, but never. What happened to that guy who was gassed by the IOF, according to his mom on Facebook?
Oh wow, I didn't even hear about this. An Israeli guy was
There was an Israeli guy who was a prisoner, and he was gassed by the Israeli occupation, according to his mother on Facebook. Google this. I don't know much more about the situation other than that, and she has been very vocal. I'm pretty sure she's had her account suspended and stuff.
Isn't that crazy? Why are they silencing so many people who are just speaking out against speaking out about, the reality that's happening, the truth that's going on, but they're just spreading all these kind of lies, which, you know.
Why is the Israeli occupation constantly lying? Is it because they are made of lies?
Well, not while they're lying, but why do you think that it's just like the West is so committed to like pushing their lies? We know why they're lying. That's what they're about. Zionism was built on lies. A land without a people for a people without a land. It was all fucking lies from there. Oh, everybody in Palestine, they just left because, you know, their leaders told them to. Like, that was the biggest fucking crockish shit ever. You know, Benny Morris, he got access to the archives. He went through it. He's like, maybe in like 6 villages out of hundreds.
No, nobody left willingly. Nobody left Palestine willingly, and they were driven out by the terrorist gangs, and then the people who they had given refuge to, the Jewish refugees from the Holocaust, stole their same homes.
Yeah, the only reason people, it seems to me, that they would have left was because they heard about things like Deir Yassin, they heard about things like Tentura, and they're like, we better get the fuck out of here.
And when you say that, you're talking about mass rape, right? You're talking about mass murder. You're talking about literal like crimes against humanity that spread village to village. And Palestinians are proud people, right? They're people who are like, they don't like, if you disrespect them and the family, like it's taken very seriously. And so when they're hearing down, in the next town over, they raped a 16-year-old girl. I mean, what would you do?
Right? I'd get up and leave.
Yeah,
right?
you'd probably dip because you don't want to get fucking raped by Zionists.
No, I definitely wouldn't organize a music festival and do it right there. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
I definitely want to do that. Let me ask you a question. I know you're co-host of the Palestine pod.
Yep.
Have you had a guest that you really loved on the pod?
Of course.
We've had
many guests.
One in particular, like a favorite guest?
Well, probably like the pivotal one for me was Nkosi Mandela, who is the grandson of the great Nelson Mandela.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And he said very clearly that, and this was like 2 years ago before South Africa brought the case at the ICJ. So I got a little preview from him. He said the House of Mandela stands with the Palestinian people and with Palestine to this day, that there is no cause more righteous, that there are no more people who need our help than the Palestinian people at this moment. And, freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. He reiterated that.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, what are some ways that you think people can help?
Oh, absolutely. So you can, just like I did today, get involved with a protest. I went to a WOL organized protest. Shout out Nardine Kiswani and WOL within our lifetime. They are doing great protests here in New York City. Then also tap in with Palestinian Youth Movement. They have organized protests all over the country. You can get involved in direct action with organizations like Palestine Action and Palestine Action US. They are working to dismantle the weapons manufacturers because we must be throwing our bodies on the war machine. We must be stopping the bombs before they get to the occupation. We know that as soon as the occupation gets their hands on bombs, it's more dead children. We know that. It's more dead Palestinians. We know that, right? And so what we must do
they're just going to want to write their names on the bomb before they murder the Palestinians with them.
Right. And that is happening among children, right? Which is really super fucked up behavior. And so it's like what we must be doing is stopping the flow of goods, just like what Yemen is doing, stopping it at every level. And, we're not going to get this through electoral politics. Like, so don't fucking wait for Genocide Joe or the other guy. Like, you need to get involved today. And not everybody needs to do everything, but everybody does need to do something. And so it's like, if you cannot get arrested, if you cannot put yourself in jeopardy, just donate to these organizations. Go ahead and share their information. You know what I mean? Do what you can at the level that you feel comfortable, but also recognize that people will ask in this moment, what did you do?
Those are all really great things. I know that you, like I mentioned earlier, your stories.
Also, really quickly, my family was murdered in the Holocaust. I have people in my family who did not make it, okay? And so what I do every day is in memory of them. How could I possibly honor their memory and allow the exact same thing to happen to Palestinians right now?
Absolutely.
I do this for the people who didn't make it and for my ancestors who made it out and created me.
Amen. Too often I feel like people use the Holocaust as justification for what's going on, and that's not the way it should be used. It should be used, like you mentioned it just now, Michael, as an example of what should never happen again. Never again for anyone, not just for the Jewish people.
Imagine saying never again from the other side of the fence. You're literally on the other side of the fence, the Warsaw Ghetto, looking at you. And you're like, never again.
It's
on Instagram.
Crazy, right? If like the Germans would have been saying that, like if the Germans had a massacre earlier and they're like, never again for us, but we're going to wipe all you Jews out.
Did you hear the story of Hind? This 6-year-old girl who was trapped in her car.
They just found her, right?
Yes, they just found, she was dead, as well as the civil workers who came to her rescue. It's like if Anne Frank had audio. And people want to be like, I feel unsafe.
No, it's so true.
You feel unsafe? You feel unsafe.
How about the people that bombs are dropping and their houses are destroyed and they're like everyone knows someone that's been murdered? It's true because so many people read Anne Frank and look up to Anne Frank, and we don't have an Anne Frank now. We have hundreds of them all over social media. All you have to do is go on TikTok and you can see hundreds and hundreds of Palestinian Anne Franks, young children speaking out who just watched their families get murdered, who watched their homes get destroyed, who haven't had a life, who have no life, who have no hope. All they know is death and destruction.
And the occupation,
people want to ignore them.
The occupation is said that they are unfamiliar with the incident that went viral worldwide. They're busy pimping out the tragedy of the Holocaust. They're busy pimping out Anne Frank's memory to investigate.
It's absolutely crazy.
And I'm sure once they investigate, they'll be like, turns out we did nothing wrong.
Yeah, it's so crazy because Israel always does that with either they'll do an investigation and it'll lead to nowhere, or they'll be like, we're going to investigate, and then people just kind of like forget about whatever. And I don't, like, when are we going to stop accepting that? Like, I think with UNRWA it should have been like, okay, whatever, we need more evidence, or who cares? 12 people did something? You're going to stop a whole organization with over 30,000 employees? Meanwhile, the government of Israel is talking about getting rid of all the Palestinians. And people are like, oh, well, you know, let's give them more military money. What is billions of dollars Genocide Joe wants to give them now?
Might want to look into what's going on inside the government. You know what I mean? Like,
no, it's so true.
They got a couple terrorists in there who are making decisions, and I wish they'd stop.
Itamar Ben-Gvir was convicted in Israel
Actual
of terrorism.
A couple times,
Bezalel Smotrich got arrested for a bomb.
How fucking insane do you have to be convicted of terrorism by a terrorist state? Like, you literally have to go above and beyond.
Right? He wasn't allowed to serve in the military because of his extremist views, and now he's in charge of the whole police of the whole country.
They were like, streamline him to the top, baby boy. He's got leadership written all over him.
Ooh, this is our type of guy. He's getting a raise for sure.
All he needs is a tiny little mustache.
You had a picture of your home of a guy who went into a mosque and murdered a bunch of Palestinians? You're going places, kid.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane. Yeah, what a bunch of scumbags. That's what pisses me off so much when people just want to blindly support Israel. It's like, don't you see that your blind support has created this, has empowered these fascists, has made Israel what it is now, this apartheid committing a genocide, and you just want to be like, I am Israel Chai. It's like, shut the fuck up. That's what I am Israel Chai is right now.
What do you think the Germans said if you were like, hey, you guys are Nazis?
They're probably like, yeah, we are. You know,
no.
You don't think they're proud about Nazis?
they would like they probably would have
Nazis wasn't Nazis yet.
No,
right?
no. Well, like the whole thing was they're like, oh, we didn't know, right? They were like, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know the horrors. We didn't know.
Well, no, the Germans were like that, but I think the Nazis were like, we were just following orders.
Okay,
right?
so yeah, there's that as well. But like, you know, there were probably variations of Nazis as well. There were Ben-Givers, you know?
There was the lazy Nazi, low-key Nazi. I only kill Jews on the weekends.
You know, but like, what I'm saying is there was a spectrum as well,
okay,
right?
No, for sure, you're right.
And so it's like...
Hitler's getting on my nerves. How many times do I have to go like that in one day?
And so it's like, you know, you see that same sort of... Mark Twain said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And so you see that same type of thinking coming from the Israelis themselves, where they're like, I'm just following orders. That's why I'm serving in this war crimes army. I didn't want to go to jail. I didn't want to create waves. I didn't want to, you know.
Well, that's the problem, right? Just kind of following orders, just going with the flow, just seeing things as this us versus them mentality, not questioning.
Yeah.
I think that's why people find what we do and us speaking out so powerful because we are pointing fingers at our own side when it seems like it's not only an Israel thing, but it's a human condition thing to point fingers at the other side.
I'm pointing fingers at anybody who's a Zionist, and so that doesn't mean Jew to me. You know what I mean?
Michael's like, I'm just pointing fingers at Zionists, all right?
That doesn't,
and it's this one, motherfucker.
Yeah, it's actually this one.
Okay. I wouldn't want to go up there. It's really, I'm sure it's even dirtier than dirty, right? That's like a black hole up the Zionist ass. Forget about it.
It's like, I don't consider Zionists Jews, right? So like they are Zionists, right? And I'm mad at anybody who's a Christian Zionist, anybody who calls themselves a Jewish Zionist, anybody who is a Zionist who doesn't even believe in God. I am pointing a finger at you. You are not doing like God's work, right? You are literally murdering people, displacing people, and then creating refugees, which is maybe the least Jewish thing you could do.
Do you think Zionism will completely destroy Judaism, or do you think there's still a chance?
No, I think Jews will slowly start moving back away from Zionism towards anti-Zionism, right? And that anti-Zionism is actually the future of Judaism, that there is no Judaism is Zionism, right? If you are trying to salvage Zionism, you will go down in the history books with the war crimes army at the Hague, right? You will stand trial if you're trying to cling to Zionism. And that is for those liberal fucking Zionists too. Literally anybody. I don't care if you're like rabbit at the mouth or if you're like, I swear I believe I could coexist. You should abandon Zionism with the quickness, apologize for the harm that you've done, right? And then embrace Judaism because it has nothing to do with the death cult you've been a part of.
No, that totally seems like, Zionism is the death of Judaism, and that was kind of maybe some of the anti-Semites' plans all along,
Yeah.
And that if people don't, and like I see now, it's like it's such an opportunity, and it's so upsetting for me to see so many Jews stand by Zionism instead of speaking up, because this is like the time where Jews could stand up and maybe like help themselves and help the world and help people, but we're just continuing the same thing that's been happening for many years, and it hasn't led anywhere good. That's what I don't understand. It's like everything that happened over the last 75 years led to the attack on October 7th, and instead of people saying like, we better fucking do something different and change stuff up and stop oppressing and occupying and murdering and dehumanizing the people, they're like, oh, let's do a genocide in Gaza right now. And it's like, don't you understand that this is just like the snowball is getting like way too big, and now it's just gonna collapse and not only bring the state of Israel down, but Jews everywhere down with it?
100%. Do you think that there were white South Africaners who heavily opposed apartheid, right?
Okay, I mean, I'm sure there was a couple. There were definitely some of them that opposed apartheid, yeah.
The point is, like,
more than a couple.
Most of the society was on board with apartheid. Right?
Yes.
And it took the pressure of outside forces for it to collapse because they could not reflect on themselves and see that what they were doing was wrong. They needed to be told from the outside, as well as obviously the resistance of Nelson Mandela and South African ANC. I don't want to discredit them in any way. They were a crucial part of the end and collapse of apartheid, but so was the growing building pressure.
And they were called terrorists at the time.
And Mandela served time in jail and was called a terrorist, up until like 2004 by U.S. institutions. And so, what I'm saying is like it will take the growing pressure as well as the resistance from inside to bring about the change and the collapse of the society because they're not mentally fit for it. That's why they're blocking aid trucks right now. It's such an easy test, and they're failing.
They are failing, and they seem to be totally clueless about how badly they're failing and what a horrible representation they are for Jews everywhere in the world. It's like that doesn't, like the self-awareness is absolutely none.
If you allow them to consider themselves representatives of Jews, yes, they are a bad representation.
They
claim.
Israel claims to be the representative of the Jews, but it's not. But Israel's pushing that so hard because it's the veil that it hides behind to commit its acts. Because that's, when it kills somebody, no, we're Jewish. It's like it keeps on bringing out the Jew card. That's, it was only a couple years ago that it became more officially that it's like it got into like in the government that it's the state for the Jews, or it's the official the Jewish state. That they went like they had it.
You're talking about the nation state law of 2018?
Yeah.
Okay, so explicitly they wrote it on paper in 2018.
Right.
But they've been saying it for years.
No, they've been saying it forever, but they went that far to be like, look, it's on paper, we're Jews.
Their actual...
We don't have the yellow star, we have this new Jew card.
Right. That's on them.
Yeah.
the actual reasoning that they gave the United States and Britain and the United Nations and stuff is like, you have to let us colonize because you all colonized and we Jews need a colony, right? And so if you discriminate against us, you're being anti-Semitic and you're singling us out. And that is literally the same talking points that they use to this day.
It's absolutely crazy because, yeah, I've heard this too, the sentiment, oh, well, then you should leave America because America was, it's like, well, why don't we get to colonize?
I'm
you
happy
got to kill
to.
the Indians. Why don't we get to kill our Indians? Why don't we? And like, what kind of mindset is that, you know?
To that, I would say I'm happy to leave the United States and I'm actively working on it.
Oh, yeah, where do you want to go?
I don't want to tell the Zionists where I'm going to be at.
That's probably a smart move. Speaking of Judaism for a sec, I'm curious, do you have any favorite Jewish traditions? Is there anything particular in Judaism that you like or you hold close to your heart?
I really like making latkes.
Okay.
I did it with family growing up around the high holidays, so it brings back memories of childhood. And also, I love my kitchen smelling like starch.
Okay, nice. And then you like to take that excess oil and throw it in the face of Zionists. No.
I mean, if there was a Zionist around.
I got violent just there.
That's good. Yeah, good.
I knew you'd like that one.
Harness that anger. Directed at Zionists.
Do you have a favorite Jew of all time?
A favorite Jew of all time? Jacob de Haan. He was the first anti-Zionist Jew murdered by Zionism.
Oh, wow. Can we tell us a little bit more about him?
He was a Dutch poet and creator, and he went to Palestine, called it Palestine explicitly, and then he was like very famous where he was from, but decided to leave and be a part of like, you know, a cohesive community of Arabs and Jews, Palestinians and Jews in Palestine. And he was beloved by the community, the religious community. He was Haredi as well. And he was at temple, and the members of the Haganah assassinated him outside of the temple because he was fit to speak at a proceeding in London. He was about to travel to London and speak out against the creation of the Zionist state. He wanted nothing to do with the state of Zionism, and he thought that it would bring about exactly what it has brought about. And so they murdered him before he could get to the event and speak at it. And, you know, he was remembered fondly by everybody in the community. And he was also gay, so he was like a civil rights veteran, like a pioneer, you know, maybe not a pioneer, not the best words, but he was like a civil rights leader of his time, basically, because he was gay. Can you edit out the pioneer thing? Okay.
He was a pioneer of gay. He was the first one to boldly go where most guys haven't gone before.
A lot of pirates. He was a booty pirate. All right, come on. Anyway, come on.
But okay, thank you for telling us about
Jacob
him.
de Haan, murdered by Zionists for his anti-Zionist beliefs, and this was before the state even existed.
And it's so crazy because, you know, there are so many, like Yitzhak Rabin also killed because he was trying to create peace. And I just think it's crazy because, you know, why is it okay when Jews kill other Jews? Like people are more silent with it, but when in an act of resistance or when people are having self-defense or fighting back, oh, they're fucking terrorists. But when an Israeli kills Yitzhak Rabin, it's like, oh, no, it's the Palestinians that don't want peace. It's because of them that there's no peace. Like, it's absolutely...
Where's the bring them home poster for Jacob de Haan?
Yeah, right? Where's the bring him home for Yitzhak Rabin, you know?
Yeah.
Where's the bring him home for the guys that were shot waving the white flag, speaking Hebrew, not wearing any clothes?
Yeah.
You know, of course.
They're like, bring them home so we can murder them ourselves.
It's just like, we'll bring them home in a body bag.
We want to get our hands on them, okay?
It's so sad. So I know we talked about your stories before. Is there anyone, I know you share a lot of people, is there anyone you want to shout out that you think people should be following, that you would recommend to get greater insight into what's happening in Gaza or for the Palestinian cause?
Yeah, absolutely. Follow my co-host Gazan Girl. He is a medical professional inside of Gaza. His name is Joe Yusuf. He goes by the username Joe Gaza 93. We've had him on the podcast as well. Follow Adnan Bark. Follow Wool Within Our Lifetime. Nerdine Kiswani, she just had her account taken offline completely, but I believe their main account was restored. So follow them. Palestinian Youth Movement, Palestine Action, as well as anybody else who is doing good work on the ground in Gaza. There's a bunch of charities that I've linked in my my profile and stuff.
Yeah, definitely check out Michael's profile. His stories are amazing. You're very educated on this matter, and I'm curious, do you have any resources that you would want to recommend to people who are interested in learning more, gaining deeper insight, even Jewish people who are going through the unlearning process and want to find out more? Is there anything that you would recommend?
I would say check out the Palestine pod. Thank you so much. But also Palestine Academy is good, as well as Decolonize Palestine. And then there is a website called Israeli Crimes, where they are cataloging all of the crimes that the Zionists are committing, literally like minute by minute. And so if you ever wanted to just scroll through the worst things you've ever seen in your life and then still have a ton more, check out that.
Yeah, unfortunately, Israelis don't only commit crimes in Israel and in Palestine against the Palestinian people, but they commit crimes everywhere.
That's right.
And they do some really horrible, shady shit. Did you hear about in Cyprus what happened? All the rapes, the gang rapes that Israelis do in Cyprus. There was one case where 10 Israelis, they gang raped a woman. Some of their parents are Israeli officials. And the woman got arrested for, they said, making false accusations. It was only at the end of last year that they had those charges were gone and they were removed. They had to fight a case, and they're still trying to get action against the 10 Israelis who all went back to Israel and were greeted with applauses when they got off the plane. And then at the end of last year, another girl in Cyprus got gang raped by 5 Israelis, and they're still working out that crime. They might get away scot-free again. And I feel like they have this entitlement because, this land is ours, God, we can do whatever we want, and they take that entitlement wherever they go. And people seem to have no problem with that. But this speculation of what happened on October 7th, people are ready to die on the sword, even though no victims have come forward. There's zero evidence. There's no forensic evidence. I mean, I know the woman from the UN was over there trying to meet with any victims. I don't think she was able to. No. I haven't heard anything more about that.
And the sister of one of the alleged victims told the New York Times to retract what she wrote.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were like, you actually baited us into this interview. We thought it was something completely different.
Yeah, the New York Times story that I thought it was bullshit. I've been reading a lot about this because
Speaking of crimes that they're committing all over, though, there was a kid who is the son of somebody who works for the consulate in Miami or maybe in Florida somewhere.
Okay,
he ran over a police officer.
And he's getting off free, right?
I think they initially tried to say that he had diplomatic immunity, but then the State Department got involved and they were like, no, he doesn't. But also at Columbia University, there were 2 IOF officers who hit people with chemical weapons here in the United States. They deployed chemical weapons like the sewage skunk spray. So they have a bear spray version of the skunk water that they shoot all over the Holy Land. Right, really good upkeep of the Holy Land, by the way.
We love God's land.
Yeah, we're the chosen people of God. That's why we spray skunk spray everywhere, which the BBC says smells worse than dead bodies and raw sewage. And so, anyways, there are 2 IOF officers who came over to a protest here in the United States, which is a First Amendment protected activity, and then attacked U.S. citizens, right, with chemical weapons. And you really haven't heard a ton about that.
No, right? Last I heard, there was a police investigation. The school had forbid them from coming on campus, but that was just that was kind of it.
I heard,
even though there's a chemical attack happening, and it wasn't who are these people? They should go to jail. They should do something. But again, it kind of just went under the radar because it's unfortunate, but it's people don't care
Well,
about
the
Palestine.
NYPD is complicit in the crimes of the genocide against the Palestinians, right? They
100
actually
people, they were trained also, right?
there's a deadly exchange, but they also actually have offices in Jerusalem.
Oh, wow.
The NYPD has 13 offices internationally, right? For what reason? Who knows? But they're engaged in a lot of the surveillance, they're engaged in a lot of intelligence gathering, and they send that stuff over there. It's like a fluid transition, right? So somebody takes a picture at a protest here in New York City, it's in a database in Palestine in like 5 minutes.
It's so crazy. And Israel doesn't only do that with NYPD, they do that with police forces all over the world.
Yeah.
It's crazy. They like, not only are they oppressing and occupying, but then they're teaching that to other countries. It's like, it's crazy. Who they arm, who they sell weapons to. It's just like, this isn't like the representation of Judaism like at all. It's like the opposite 100 times.
It's almost like ISIS, right? It's almost like our ISIS.
The Jewish ISIS.
Yeah.
I guess Zionism can kind of be like that.
Yeah.
You know?
They are literally like that because
supremacy.
they showed up like 150 years ago with guns talking about we're the real Jews. Like, what are you talking about? To who?
Yeah, I don't get that. I'm a real Jew. You're not a real Jew. Who's a real Jew? Like, anybody could be a Jew. Trump's daughter's a fucking Jew, all right? Sammy Davis Jr. was a goddamn Jew.
Yeah.
What message do you have for the Jews, Michael?
Be better.
What message do you have for Palestinians?
I'm so sorry. Hold on. We're coming for you. We're going to help you. And I swear to God, I'm doing literally everything I can.
What message do you have for Israelis?
Go fuck yourself.
Is there anything you want to plug, Michael?
Check out the Palestine pod. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Cool to be here in this space station looking at people unload laundry.
Let them know your Instagram. Follow Michael on Instagram. His stories are amazing. All his posts are so insightful. Like, seriously, like every time when I look at his stories and I'm always learning stuff and I'm always, oh my gosh, I have so much more to learn. And the depravity and the crazy things that Israel's doing that I didn't even realize. And I'm like, thank God he's like bringing this to light and bringing awareness. So definitely follow him at.
Thank you. Michael_Schirtzer, SCHIRTZER. Also check out the Palestine pod on Instagram and you can follow me from there.
So be sure to check all that out. Of course, you can follow me at Jonathan Randall across social media. Michael, thanks so much for coming by. It was so great to have you here on the American Jew podcast. See everybody later. Free Palestine.
Yeah.